I am Dustin Baker. We have, let's count them, 10 days, a week and a half until free agency. I'll continue to say it for any newcomers. Legal tampering on March 11th is when the action starts. Don't have the weird adjective fool you. Legal tampering is when the dominoes begin falling. So we are marching you up to that on the beginning of March. First, though, we had an unforeseen domino because overthecap.com got it wrong, if you can believe that. Had we known that Alexander Mattison would save the team $3 million for these last 2 or 3 months, he would have been everybody's offseason cut candidate. But we were led to believe there was no financial incentive to release Mattison. Apparently there was, and reportedly he will be gone, leaving 4 Vikings running backs on the 2024 books, which are Ty Chandler, Kene Nwangu, Dwayne McBride, and Myles Gaskin. At the Combine, Kevin O'Connell made it sound like a new running back was probably on the way. This was before the Mattison news. He said we're going to look to infuse talent, possibly from free agency or the draft. Bada bing, Alexander Mattison was released a couple days later, or it looks like it's heading that way. So I'm going to start, and we're going to go around the panel here. Brev, I'm going to start with you, sir. Your reaction to Mattison's exodus after 5 seasons, and who, if anybody, replaces him?
I guess my reaction was just like anybody else. I was kind of shocked they actually did it. I was happy they did it. I'm like you said, Over the Cap got it wrong. So most people weren't aware that the guarantees for his contract didn't kick in until March 15th. Mm-hmm. So realistically, looking back last offseason when we saw the extension, it was really a 1-year prove it deal. And we just never knew there was these guarantees that kicked in late. But I'm happy they did it. Alex Mattison's a great dude. Wasn't a great running back one last year, as we saw his carries diminish a lot later in the season. But I'm happy they did it. And replacing him, they've got the money to do it. I don't know if you want to go in free agency for a running back, although the running back pool is pretty stacked. But I'd like to see them go mid rounds in the draft for one of those top 5, top 7 running back prospects for sure.
I'll jump in with myself there. I agree with you. I want the running back from the draft because I want to give Ty Chandler an audition, and I think a dude from the 3rd or 4th round who will be a pretty good runner will complement that nicely, especially with Mattison out of the way now. My theory here is on Mattison. He just, like you said, Brev, wasn't cut out for RB1. And because Vikings fans are so accustomed to Adrian Peterson and Dalvin Cook, we're ready to run the guy out of town because he wasn't an RB1. And there are just certain dudes that are better for RB2. And that was Mattison. I can tell, Dakota, from your social media thumbprint that you feel like I do with Mattison. He's a really good dude, and I think the Vikings fans should remember him fondly. As soon as I said that yesterday, about 6 dudes were like, no, the guy sucked last year. What are you talking about? I'm like, we can be humans here, an adult, and appreciate the person, which is what I tried to communicate. But that was too much for some. So I will miss Mattison. I understand the move from a business perspective. Dakota, what say you? And who replaces him?
Well, yeah, kind of like you said, when I posted about how that I was saddened that he was leaving, and that it is sort of the nature of the beast, I had to add an additional, I understand why we are doing it. Do not mansplain to me. But like I said on my TikTok, kind of reiterating a lot of the Vikings news this last week, it's not a surprise that it happened. It's more a surprise that they did it so fast, I think, if anything. To me personally, I kind of expected it to happen. I was like, you know what? I feel like they're going to take the cap hit, and then the cap extension, it got announced. I was like, okay, now they're definitely going to take the cap hit. And then, like everyone else was saying, we found out that it actually ended up saving us money. I will say, though, as a person, I'm definitely going to miss his energy on the Minnesota Vikings. He was a huge mental health advocate, and I think that that is really important, especially because his focus was on men, which is not something that is often talked about in this country. So he will very much be missed. Now, in regards to running back, there are also quite a few really good running backs that will be hitting the free agency market. I know a lot of people are freaking out about Saquon Barkley right now. I'm not too sure if we personally could afford him, since we do have Danielle, Justin, Kirk, and all these other people that need to be re-signed. So I'm also of the camp that thinks that we should maybe draft somebody similar to what Brev was saying, kind of give Ty Chandler an interview process. I also am interested to see if we will re-sign Cam Akers. We picked him up. He got injured. So part of me thinks that maybe, just maybe, it'll be kind of a an audition process between Cam and Ty, and that I personally wouldn't be surprised if they ended up sharing the RB1 responsibilities this season if we do pick him up.
If there are Cam Akers fans out there, it became a big possibility that he'll be back, even if they draft a running back on top of it all, with Mattison gone. On Saquon Barkley, I believe the Vikings could afford him, but I don't think the quintessential Moneyball general manager will spend $9-10 million on a running back who only knock on him is injury. I think he might have learned his lesson from Marcus Davenport. We shall see. Producer Tyler, reaction to Mattison gone and his soon-to-be replacement.
Well, I was definitely surprised by Mattison's release because of the cap thing. Like, usually the media is pretty on the ball when it comes to, cap numbers and how much a team's going to save if you cut X player. And all of the information out there on Mattison's contract was completely wrong. And had we known that we would have saved, 3.3 million instead of 600,000, as you said, Dustin, people would have said, oh, he's gone.
Oh, it would have been the most no-brainer of no-brainers.
Yeah, easy, right? You improved the run game, you removed Mattison, who was wildly inefficient, and you go out and draft a guy. And that's what I would do personally is, the Vikings have 2 4th-rounders this year, 2 5th-rounders, 2 6th-rounders. So, Kwesi's going to be doing a ton of moving around during day 3 of the draft. And that's where you can find really good value at the running back position. So, we did draft, I believe, Ty Chandler in Kwesi's first draft. Then we drafted Dwayne McBride in the 7th. And I think we'll do the same thing this year where we draft a late-round running back, and we're going to have a running back by committee, and we'll bring back Cam Akers, like Dakota said. But I just don't see this team spending a significant amount of money at the running back position, knowing that they have these big decisions coming up with, Jefferson, Kirk, and Daniil. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. They certainly have the money to do that if they wanted to. I just wouldn't understand the logic of, hey, we can't spend big at this important position, but we can certainly drop $10 million on a running back who's, 26 years old and is bound to regress at some point. So I think we try and look towards the draft for our next running back, who is part of the Kevin O'Connell running back by committee.
The only reason that the Vikings will sign a big-name free agent running back is because they finally put their foot down, realizing the last 2 years have gone pear-shaped at running the football, and they've realized, hey, we've dinked around. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to get Josh Jacobs or something like that. That would be the only rationale for the Moneyball general manager to spend somewhat big bucks on running backs. This is the deepest running back class in free agency's history. And that's mainly a testament to how they're treated and valued now, not necessarily an indictment of NFL history. It's just that the rest of the world has come to terms with you don't need a $15 million running back to win a Super Bowl at all. In fact, you want the opposite. You want LeGarrette Blount over and over, and he's the special sauce. All right, we've got the running back talker. We will miss Alexander Mattison, at least the dude, or most of us anyhow. Now we're going to pivot to familiar offseason talkers, which is Kirk Cousins. Every show, I think we have to touch on Kirk. This one came from the Combine, which is going on at the moment. Brevan, I'm going to ask you. Let's see, what's this dude's name? Zach Klein, an Atlanta-based reporter, said that all of the Falcons' attention has centered on Kirk Cousins. About 4 days ago, it was like a trade with Justin Fields was imminent, and then it turns out that might have been premature. Now, in Zach Klein's defense, he not corrected. He made sure to tell the world that this isn't something he heard from Atlanta's people. He says it's the buzz at the Combine. So, Brevan, is Kirk buzz to the Falcons, is that real or is that smoke?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all if it was real. Thinking one of the more quarterback needy teams in the NFL relative to who they have on their roster, like their offense is perfect for a top 10 quarterback, and that's after last year and honestly the last couple of years, calling Kirk Cousins a top 10 quarterback might be being kind of generous. He might be more than that. So thinking this offense is loaded and ready to go to drop a very quality quarterback that is in the coming up on the twilight of his career. That's not crazy at all. I think it's definitely something that is and should be on the Falcons' radar. I guess there wouldn't be as much fireworks in the Atlanta offense, like visibly, if like comparing Kirk Cousins to Justin Fields, but it's not an argument that Kirk Cousins would elevate that team much more than Justin Fields would. So just it should be a buzz. I think it'd be really smart for Atlanta to try to capitalize on the roster that they have now. And it's a no-brainer, really. Kirk Cousins throwing to Kyle Pitts, Drake London, handing it to Bijan and Tyler Algier, I think. It's a no-brainer if you're Atlanta. So I 100% would buy the smoke.
The Falcons have $38 million in available cap space, which is right about how much the Vikings have, thereabouts. And Raheem Morris is their new head coach. He was on the Commanders' staff in Washington when Kirk was starting out there. Raheem Morris was some sort of position coach. So they've crossed paths. The only reason I think Fields might make more sense for the Falcons, if it really is between Fields and Kirk, is you kind of have a 1-year trial with Fields if you want it. You don't necessarily have to trade for Fields and boom, pay him $45 million on a next big contract. You can have a Jordan Love type thing where he has an audition, or you give him $20 million per season like they did for Jordan Love. So I think between the odds, I would say it's a coin flip between Cousins and Fields to go to Atlanta. But either one make a lot of sense. And Cousins is more of a tangible asset because you already know on that team, he's going to throw 4,000 passing yards at minimum, 30 touchdowns. That's what he does. And whether or not they want to spend 40 to 45 million on that remains to be seen. I think that's what they have to decide. Dakota, a touchy subject for you again, because it involves a possible Kirk exit. Do you buy the smoke?
Well, first and foremost, I just wanted to say that in regards to the rumors, at no point, like you had said, did this reporter actually talk to anyone in the Atlanta Falcons organization. All of this is just coming from pure buzz from all of the other media individuals within the combine this week. Second of all, I do want to say that I know that it is being reported that apparently there's already a deal in place. That's not true. At no point have the Atlanta Falcons actually spoken to Kirk Cousins. Lastly, I do also want to say that at this point, it is just buzz that the Atlanta Falcons want him. There are no details. I think the only validity to any of this actually comes from, oh my gosh, I always forget her name. Let me pull up Twitter really fast. Diana something. She's an NFL senior reporter for the. Thank you. Yes. She's an NFL reporter for the Atlantic. Athletic, excuse me. She is suggesting that it is the most reasonable outcome for the Atlanta Falcons if the Minnesota Vikings do not re-sign him. She actually does not believe that he will be taking a hometown discount, as he keeps saying that he will. At this point, for me, yes, I think if Atlanta were to go for a quarterback and Kirk Cousins is available, it makes the most amount of sense for their offense. My issue with that is I fear that Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons are going to get themselves trapped in this mentality that he is their quarterback for the future, when we all know very well that he's aging. He's got an Achilles injury now. To me, it doesn't set them up for future success. It sets them up for current success and gives them some trouble later on. I don't know. I personally, separating my own emotions about Kirk Cousins leaving, I don't think it's a smart move purely because it sets them up for now, not for the future. And they've got a young offense that they should be setting up for the future, not for just right now.
I will remind our viewers that when you watch the Netflix documentary last summer with Cousins, you learned that he's a meticulous studier and planner. And I look back on his Vikings career and I nominate 2018 as his worst season as a Viking. So I caution Falcons fans or Falcons folks that he might not be absolute gangbusters year one until he settles in. That's how it worked with the Vikings. In fact, 2018 was the only real season where I looked at Kirk down the stretch and was like, he was the problem. And all the other seasons, it was the damn defense. Dakota, one quick follow-up. Assuming I'm right, and Tyler, I think, has declared this too, that we believe that he will depart, what quarterback solution that doesn't involve Kirk will make you smile?
Oh my gosh. JJ McCarthy.
It is?
I
Okay.
I have not been very quiet about how I feel about JJ McCarthy. That video that came out from the combine of him throwing to his running back, excuse me, on like a second floor lobby of a hotel into like that like dark corridor. I was like, oh, okay, is that Kirk 2.0? I'm there. Sign me up. I'm down.
All right. So McCarthy even with somewhat easier pain. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Tyler, you are up to address the buzz of Cousins to the Falcons.
Yeah, I'm buying it just because it only takes one team in the NFL to offer more than Minnesota for Kirk to want to leave. And Florio mentioned this, is that there's a certain recruitment aspect that's involved with really any free agent where if the Vikings are kind of coming off as, we want Kirk to be back, but just on our terms, it can kind of feel, for Kirk at least, like the Vikings tolerate him. But when you have a team like an Atlanta or like a Pittsburgh or any team that would be interested in Kirk that is saying, hey, we'll give you a 2-year deal, we'll give you a 3-year deal, hey, we'll do this, we want you here, I just think that has a huge impact, and Kirk wants to be somewhere where he's wanted, and it's like you said, it's not necessarily the dollar amount, it's the structure, it's the context behind the money that matters to him. So I'm not sure if Kirk wants to be a bridge quarterback. I don't think he's interested in, 2024 is my final rodeo with the Vikings, and then I'm going to test the free agent market. I think he wants that last big contract and a little bit of security, knowing that he's going to be the starter for the next 2 to 3 years. Now, say if Atlanta signs Kirk, that doesn't necessarily prevent them from drafting a JJ McCarthy. So they could just double up and they could say, okay, JJ McCarthy is 21 years old. We're going to let him sit behind Kirk Cousins for a year or two. And, we'll have our short-term window with Kirk Cousins and also our long-term window with JJ McCarthy if everything goes well. So I look at this and I just think Atlanta is going to be one of the most competitive teams for Kirk Cousins because of the pieces they have around him and just sort of that Zach Robinson angle where you have a McVay protege running the offense in Atlanta now, and Kirk just fits that really well. So, I mean, I'd love for Kirk to stay in Minnesota for a year and we get McCarthy, but heck, maybe Atlanta does it before us.
Yeah, I should say, if I wasn't clear, I am too buying the buzz, but I've bought that buzz for about a month now. Once I realized that Cousins back in Minnesota, I just think it would have been agreed upon by now. Like, not necessarily that they can put ink to paper, but it leads me to believe that the Vikings have an off-ramp scheduled if he doesn't like their offer that's on the table. That's where I settled in the last 3 weeks after flip-flopping in January. All right, one more quarterback-themed item. My guy in this draft is Drake May. That will be my smiley scenario if the Vikings trade up somehow, feels unlikely now, to the Patriots spot and get May at number 3. This guy will be elated. Incidentally, the Vikings hired Josh McCown, who was the merchant of the 2003 defeat for the Cardinals over the Vikings. Even though it wasn't a playoff game, it was one of the most miserable Vikings defeat in my life. That aside, he is now the Vikings quarterback coach, and bada bing, he was a coach on Drake May's high school staff, and so there's a connection there. And then Tyler reminded the group before the show today that he was also Sam Darnold's backup. So that big group of people that want Sam Darnold as the bridge quarterback, there's your segue. Brevan, do you think that McCown, with his connection to Drake May, means anything, and do you like the hire?
I love the hire. I'd be lying if I said I knew a ton about Josh McCown, like as a coach, and I learned everything from the reports coming out that he was Drake May's was he a quarterback coach at the school, or was he a OC?
I don't know.
Oh, well, he was one of the coaches for May in high school. That's basically the extent I know about McCown, other than him as a player. But I think it's a great hire. He's a guy that's in the NFL recently. He's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL, and a guy that sticks around in the NFL for as long as Josh McCown did. He knows a thing or two. So I don't think I'll ever really get mad about a quarterback coach hire unless they like hired me or somebody. But I think it's a good hire. I would love to think it means something deeper about a trade up for Drake May, because we agree. I think a lot of people would agree that a trade up for Drake May would be absolutely electric and would get me amped up. I want to see the Vikings draft a quarterback. I can't imagine. I'm 24, going on 25. I can't imagine being of the older crowd and never seeing this quarterback. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it. I can't imagine going that long and never seeing this team. Like we tried for Teddy, but that was pick what 32. This team, we've never picked a quarterback in the top 10. It's time to swing for the fences. Quasi, put your balls on the table. Let's go get him. Whether that's May, whether that's McCarthy. And I wanted to add to thanks Kirk. I love Kirk. I wouldn't be mad at all if we extended him. I am so happy this is almost over. Less than 2 weeks, the decision will be made. We won't have to do this anymore unless we extend him. We have to do it again in 2 years because this is already time 2 or 3. But yeah, I'd love to think McCown means something deeper for May. And I don't know. I just get chills. If anybody watching this has never watched the tape of Drake May, please go do it. It's an electricity factory.
I echo that. And I will tell you guys that the Vikings found Dante Culpepper at pick number 11 in 1999, and all three of you would have loved Culpepper. It's just that his career was injured in 2005, and it was basically like a Teddy injury where he never came back, or not Teddy injury, like a Bradford injury where that was that. But Culpepper at his peak was a lot better than Cousins, in my opinion, but Cousins is steadily more consistent for the entire dance. But Culpepper and his best 1 or 2 seasons was brilliant. So that, I mean, and the people that are watching this, they'll know Dante was money. All right, Dakota. So Josh McCown, is this little connection? I think he was I Googled it quick. I think he was a volunteer quarterbacks coach for Drake May at that high school. Do you think there's something there? Or what?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that I was old enough to watch Dante Culpepper. I was 1 year old when he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings. He was my childhood. I don't know. I don't think personally, I think not to throw shade at you guys, I think people are reading too much in the high school thing. I think we need to talk more about the fact that he's thrown shade at this man right here in the past. That is the thing. At first, I was like, why are we even talking about this? Why are we bringing that up? I think it is interesting that they have hired a man that has not made his feelings about Kirk Cousins private. He has thrown shade at Kirk Cousins, including calling him not a phenomenal leader. So if anything, I feel like it should add fuel to the fire of the people who do not think that the Minnesota Vikings will be bringing him back. However, I think in regards to if we're just talking about the Vikings drafting a rookie quarterback, whether it's Drake May or not, I think that this man being hired as the quarterbacks coach very clearly indicates that we will be picking up a quarterback in the first round, purely because his last job was working with the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young, who had nobody to throw to, but at least he looked good not throwing to anybody.
Yeah, Bryce Young's going to be okay. I know that he wasn't C.J. Stroud, and we always need the quarterback to be like Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes immediately. But Bryce Young, I think, will mature into his own. That's my personal opinion. All right, producer Tyler, closing arguments on Josh McCown, the hire by these Vikings.
Yeah, to Dakota's point about McCown's quote on Kirk, he went on the record in 2021 to say that Kirk Cousins being unvaccinated takes away from some of his ability to lead. Now, we don't need to go into a whole vaccination debate. That's not the point. But the point is McCown has been critical of Kirk in the past. And, that's probably like the juiciest part of the quote. I'm sure he has complimented him as well, so it's not all black and white. But, it's worth noting that McCown, was brought on to the Carolina Panthers staff the year that they drafted Bryce Young. So you look at McCown as someone who was great at developing quarterbacks. He was doing it before he was a coach. Like, as a backup, how many young players pretty much credited Josh McCown for being extremely instrumental in their development early on in their careers. You could name a ton. So that to me tells me that the Vikings are probably going to draft a guy regardless if they keep Kirk or not. That is part of Kwesi's long-term vision for this team, is drafting a quarterback in this year's draft. And that's why the Vikings are holding firm at this number where, hey, we'd love to bring you back, Kirk, but this is our number. And if you're not willing to take it, then adios. There's other bridge quarterbacks out there that we can, that we could sign. And they wouldn't be nearly as good as Kirk, but, they'd be good enough. They'd be good enough to start. So, like Gardner Minshew, for instance. Mm-hmm. I mean, has Gardner Minshew really ever been in an offense with a ton of weapons? He was in Jacksonville, but how good was that offense when he was there? And then Indy as a backup was okay. But, give Gardner Minshew Justin Jefferson. And, later in the season, you're giving him Hawkinson and you have Addison and hopefully a better running back situation. I'd be willing to wager that he'd at least be better than, Nick Mullins or Josh Dobbs. So the Vikings do have options in the free agent market if they're looking just for a bridge guy. And, we can go down the list, Russell Wilson, everyone's least favorite bridge quarterback option out there. And then also Sam Darnold too. If you were to find a way to acquire Sam Darnold, he does have that connection to Josh McCown to where maybe it's possible that the Jets ruined him. After McCown left, that the Jets' lack of talent and the lack of help that they gave Darnold kind of killed his confidence. And maybe if you're the Vikings, you feel like that the structure that you have with the offensive coaching staff and the talent you have on offense, maybe you can get the best out of Sam Darnold. We don't know. So it's just, I wouldn't read too much into the Josh McCown, Drake May thing, but it's notable. I don't think, it's 100% done deal that we draft Drake May or that we, somehow land Sam Darnold. But, it's worth noting for sure.
Yeah, I will continue to say that no matter what of my personal prediction, keeping Cousins for a year or two and then drafting McCarthy or Penix is the safest way to do things to keep the competitive rebuild alive. Because at the very worst, assuming Cousins is healthy, your very bottom floor is about 8 and 9. Cousins has proven that. And then if you had McCarthy or Penix or God forbid Bo Nix waiting in the wings, then you'd really be doing the competitive rebuild in spirit. And then you were talking about Kwesi drafting a quarterback this draft. I want to reiterate, thank God he didn't come in guns ablaze his first draft and force pick in the 2022 draft, because that thing had Malik Willis. People were trying to talk in the top 10. Kenny Pickett was the prize. The only one that's worth the damn is Mr. Irrelevant. So I'm very glad that didn't happen 2 years ago. All right, tomorrow, or for the viewers' sake, probably Sunday morning, Brevan and I will be back to talk with Allie Elise. She's an elite draft mind. She comes on the show once or twice a year. She'll chat with the gang. Other than that, anything else?
March 4th.
Say what? March 4th? Yeah. Dakota, yeah, we're not far from that. So that would be Monday that Dakota's theory comes true.
Her birthday wish is a Kirk Cousins re-signing with the Minnesota Vikings, for those who are not
aware. And it's a wish and a prediction. She's been vocal about it.
Vaccination debate coming on the first installment of the Social Network.
Oh, man.
All right, guys, you take it easy.
All right, later.